games.
Games, video 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 games, video. Video games.
It's April 17th, 2013, and this is what the second take of a podcast sounds like.
And I'm Nick Breckon.
I'm Chris Remo.
I'm Jake Rodkin, and this is Idle Thumbs 102.
Oh, God, this is awful.
It's the best one.
Welcome back.
Good.
Our classic lineup.
Yeah, here it is.
Yeah, we recorded one of these last night, and then our digital preamp decided that it would eat the entire episode and replace it with weird robot sounds. So now we're here.
Now we're here
to try and talk about the same stuff a second time. Sean actually couldn't deal with it, so he just left. Oh, we talked about video games.
Nick wasn't here last night, so we've
this
swapped
is new material
out,
for me.
We've swapped
our
out Sean for Nick, and we'll see if that affects the audio quality of the episode. You know, we're just trying to change like one variable at a time.
We're trying to debug our setup.
Exactly. We're gonna unplug the headphones next.
So if this works, we know Sean was the problem.
So computer games.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So you weren't here.
I wasn't here. I have no idea.
Let's just talk about Neptune's Pride first, because Neptune's Pride 2 showed up on the scene today.
The sequel to
Neptune's Pride.
Yeah.
We talked about Neptune's
Shadow is just.
We talked about the original game on the podcast, right?
Yeah, we did.
I mean, years ago.
I think so. Yeah.
Did we ever discuss the insane game that we had though? I don't.
Probably.
Feel like
we should probably just give a quick refresher on what Neptune's Pride is.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's a web browser based game, so like Farmville.
It's a web browser based game.
Some kind of baby game.
It is the opposite of a baby game.
It is actually the opposite of that.
It is, yeah.
It's the destroyer of all
It makes
games.
your life feel like that of a baby, though. Or your ability to play its game, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It more makes you feel... The ability to play the game is easy, but it feels like you are just a baby, like, who is just being stomped on by like 7 other...
No. There's one adult. It was me. I was the master of baby puppets in that round of ours.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's true. But to explain what the actual
Sean
game
thinks
is,
he's going to be that guy in our game.
That's because Sean thinks he's going to be that guy in every situation in which Sean competes with anybody for
He probably
anything.
is going to be that guy. It's going to be fine, though. It's going to ruin my life.
This game does reward ruthlessness in a way that I've never experienced in a game before.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the same as like, you know, Dota or any competitive multiplayer game where that's just like the ruthlessness isn't the thing that makes you win. It's the skill that makes you win.
Right. The ruthlessness is a byproduct.
Yeah, right. But
the
in Neptune's
political
Pride,
backstabbing and just like...
The willingness to be a complete amoral asshole is like paramount in this game. So what it is, it's a real-time strategy game, but the time scale is extraordinarily slow. So instead of taking, you know, a matter of seconds or minutes for your units to get from point A to point B, it takes a matter of hours or in some cases even days. It's a browser-based game, as Jake said, and you see a large star field that is the playing field essentially, and you start with a certain number of planets under your control, some of which have fleets of ships already stacked on them, or I guess the ones you control do.
Yeah.
From that point, you can split those fleets of ships into smaller fleets and send them off to take other planets. If you send them to a planet that is not under control by anybody, it will just become yours. If you send it to a ship with enemy ships on it, then they go through a combat algorithm and a winner's determined, and whoever's left standing controls the planet. And so, there's some more rules beyond that, but that's effectively what it is. You can
invest in various things, and there's
you can invest in technology, and there's stuff like that. But the main hook of it is the ridiculously slow thing, which means you could launch your ships at another planet, and they won't arrive there until 4 a.m.
Right.
You know.
But what becomes insane about it, though, we have to specify, is that you could launch your ships at 3:54. I could launch my ships at 3:55, and you would.
And even though it's a 16-hour trip,
or even like 10 seconds apart, and that would be the difference in the whole.
Yeah,
so that means that
the duration is hugely slow, but it is still real time.
Exactly.
It's still 1-to-1. So the
result of that is that it destroys your entire life because you're just constantly refreshing.
And you have half an hour, I think. Is it half an hour to reassign routes to your ships? But like they take half an hour to escape the planet, like they escape to.
They eventually end up effectively in deep space where they can't
yeah.
receive any new information.
So you can do crazy fake outs where you're like, if you suspect your opponent is about to go to bed or something, you can launch ships at his base. He will then react to that, but then you can cancel that order and reroute it somewhere else. And if he doesn't come back and check within half an hour, then the thing he's done is going to take fucking 12 hours to finish, and he can't do anything about it he can't change them once they're out of orbit. So it leads to just ruination of lives because you'll get up in the middle of the night.
People setting 3 a.m. alarms to get up and deploy ships are like, oh man.
Yeah.
But that's the first game, and the second game has come out now, or it's in development. It's sort of it's an active development thing, I think.
Yeah, it's like an active beta, I think.
But one of the notable features that they're touting really heavily is that the game, which I think was originally more proprietary, was it Flash based before?
Yeah, I think so.
it was.
The new version is entirely written in HTML5, which means that it works on Android and iOS devices, which means I don't know, I got really excited about it and then immediately opted out of it because I realized my life would be gone. But I sent an email out to everyone at work just saying...
So you just bombed.
Saying Neptune's Pride 2 is out. Also note that it's available for iOS. Oh, because the first email said, like, if anyone's excited about getting up at 1 a.m. to deploy some ships, and then I sent that link, and then I sent a follow-up link saying, oh, and just a note, it also works on your phone, so you don't even have to get out of bed at 1 a.m. to deploy your ships, which is like terrifying.
Oh my god!
Because you can't go and just on your iPad.
You basically just did like the area of effect spell on your office that causes people to just go apeshit and all attack their friends. You just like cast that and fucking bounce.
Right. Well,
like, you're just out of there.
An email from one of our programmers was just like, caution to anyone who hasn't played this. I actually literally ruined a week-long vacation from
a vacation.
Yeah, Andrew, one of our programmers and designers, was just like, I ruined a vacation by signing up for this game right before that. So like, beware.
Yeah.
That game was a life-threatening, life-ruining thing.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, one of the things that's fascinating about it is that it has a built-in diplomacy system where you can enter into an alliance with someone and it will be announced and everyone knows these people are in an alliance, and then you can't attack them and they can't attack you unless you break the treaty or whatever it is. But that in turn only becomes kind of a secondary messaging function where you use that to strategically suggest to people what your alliances are, but in reality you're just using the in-game messaging system to talk with other people and set up actual alliances that are not broadcast anywhere. I mean, it's just you can't trust anyone basically ever in that game.
Yep.
And also, there's only one winner, which is the reason in that game I stuck with you, because I realized you were going to be more. You were just willing to be much more of an asshole than I'm serious. And so I ended up in second place.
you knew that you'd get second by that, though.
Yeah. Right. Because there can only be one winner. So like any alliance is gonna have to end at some point. And so I'm like, well, if I could just hitch my wagon to this guy, like, I guess I'll get second, and that's okay, because he's going to be a way bigger dick than I could ever be willing to be in this game.
But you guys,
and it was true.
It was. You were right.
You guys didn't get very far into 2, but it looks measurably cleaner than the first game.
It looks great. And on a PC, I mean, the scrolling and everything is fantastic.
Yeah, the actual sort of
so
zooming around the galaxy, zooming in and out to all the different detail levels. That felt way more regimented in the first game, whereas there is just a smooth scale between the abstract map and the really close-up stuff. It's really neat.
It's all really good.
Except that...
are there significant mechanical changes, or is it mainly a rewrite of the interface?
They've added a lot of research projects that affect how... I mean, I think basically you're just investing in kind of like higher tier bonuses from like, the way the game works now, there's 3 tech tiers. It's industry, economy, and scientific research for every planet. But I think the stuff you can research now are just like higher versions of like just They just grant bonuses with multipliers on that, all of that stuff.
Oh, so you can just level those up beyond the.
I think it's
still
just
the three
it's
primary.
like an end game version of like what to do with your money. I think it's just like a funneling of stuff, but. And there's also like a hyperspace thing that like you can drop something on a planet and it's like a hyperspace relay and then have another planet that has one. And
oh man, that seems like a
connection.
Huge addition.
Which if you, I assume,
interesting. So,
I presume if you had an ally that had one of those on the other side of the space, you could funnel ships back and forth. Which would be
that gives the alliance thing a way more
because
that also makes backstabbing way more out of control.
Oh yeah,
let me just use your jump gate.
Yeah.
Womp.
Erased. Like I wonder how.
Yeah, I mean it depends how long it's like. Are they instantaneous or are they just much faster? But
don't know yet.
Don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Next week we'll report back.
Yeah, we'll have to have
an instantaneous.
We'll have to have a.
I think it's
Pride
3x, 3 times the speed.
Oh man, so I wonder what happens then if you.
It's still intense.
Yeah, it's a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really curious. Like I deliberately opted out of this game as to not have my life fall apart. I realized just by sending like Neptune's Pride 2 is out. I can feel my life erasing. Okay, I can't play this game now, but I want to hear from you and Sean what's going on later on in the next week.
It's going to be gross. It's fine.
It's good.
Yeah, it's a game.
My favorite game of Neptune's Pride was still the first one that we played at Telltale because we made everyone pick random names and draw them out of a hat.
That was so smart. That was so good.
Yeah.
We talked about that on the cast, but just the weird anonymity plus hilarious role-playing that happened in that game was just...
Well, you should explain it, because I suspect there are people listening who didn't hear us say that 3 years ago.
We played it all in the office, so we wanted people to not know who each other were because we didn't want real-life allegiances to form in the office, and also just we thought it was hilarious, so we made everyone write a fake name of a sci-fi character or just something gross that they thought, whatever you thought was funny. Everyone put them in a hat, mixed them up, and then everyone pulled a name out of the hat, so everyone in the game was just playing anonymously, which meant that, like, if someone walked to the bathroom past the guy whose computer was in the Neptune's Pride game, that person would always minimize their screen because way into late game, people started to figure out who some people were just because of accidental lunchtime conversation or like you'd catch a glimpse of the screen. But
that's so smart.
Early on, it was so good, and just people. All of the weird, like we deliberately played with allegiances off because I think it was our first game and we just wanted to start it plain, but also we were like, well, we can just form or break allegiances naturally without the allegiance system. But it meant that like people named things like Captain Olaf von Spaceface Ace would send me a note just like, I can't remember my name, but just like acting as if they're a weird like commander of a space fleet, just like greetings, citizen. Like instead of just being like, do you want to align? Like,
wasn't one of the names Jake Rodkin?
Yes, I believe that's the case. That was not me though.
Yeah, I know. That's what's funny about it. What was I going to say?
But yeah, the new Telltale game, people didn't do that. So
but the thing about allegiances is that because there are always back channel alliances, no matter what, or at least the potential for them. The alliance, the sort of public, sort of sanctioned alliance system is really fascinating because you end up with people who basically put this like passive pressure on everyone else by being like, I'm committed to being peaceful, so like everyone ally up with me, and then like 5 of 8 people will ally with him, and then it's like then it makes everyone else instantly suspicious of like the other 3 people. It's like, what are you? Why aren't you? Like, we're all doing it. Like you can create these crazy situations where you just foster that kind of.
I'm starting to remember the things that I did, and it's really gross.
Yeah,
like I had an inkling of like how much of a shithead I was today when Sean was like, "Hey, you want to lie and take out this guy?" And I was like, you're going to be a jerk and just screw me over, aren't you? He was like, no. He's like, actually being honest, I think. And I was like, are you? And then he said something shitty. And then I was like, oh, I'm just going to take that shitty thing you said and just spread it around the universe. And just tell everybody that you're being a dickhead. What are you going to do about that? And there was this whole back and forth. And it was just like, we haven't even started playing. And I'm already like thinking about how I'm going to ruin Sean.
Your 8th player has not even joined the game yet.
Yeah, I know. It's terrible. Like, it just spirals out of control.
Jesus.
I can't help myself.
God, Nick Brecken's House of Cards, like in space.
Yeah.
Oh man,
it really is.
No,
like
you private message people, and you're like,
shit.
Yeah.
Like as the spoilers for House of Cards, I guess, so I won't explain the specifics. But in the American version of that show, like the thing he does with the whole speaker of the house situation. Like if you guys have seen that, like for anyone who's seen that show, like that is the kind of shit you pull in Neptune's Pride, where you tell one person one thing, you tell someone another thing, and by the time you set all these things in place, you can be completely bald-faced about what you've done, and it doesn't even matter anymore because it's already ruined.
Right.
Like it's astonishing and horrible.
Yeah.
It's a good game.
It's a quality game.
Also, on top of all of this stuff, just the act of deploying crazy spaceships across the galaxy at that tiny, slow speed feels amazing. Like, just from a weird space grandeur standpoint, it also happens to contain insane political backstabbing. But that's a good game.
It's cool.
Do we want to just keep...
That was a guy who worked on BioShock.
Oh, really?
Jake Hybers.
Cool.
Yeah, made that game.
Do we want to just keep talking about space?
Okay.
Because we talked about...
Kerbal Space Program.
We talked about Kerbal Space Program on the Erased cast, but Nick, I think you have more time in Kerbal Space Program than anyone else.
I don't really have a story. I mean, it's just kind of a spoiler. I don't know if I actually talk about it, really.
Boo!
You got... Well, I mean,
we were all...
I built an amazing spacecraft and went to space. And it was great.
Spoiler, you can go to space.
Well, all right. I mean, I can talk about... So, like, I don't know, Kerbal Space Program. We should talk about what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a video game where... It's a sandbox game where you build, like, a spacecraft
it's like a space program simulator, I think is the easiest way to put it, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And the things that it simulates include, like, constructing the spacecraft, like piloting the spacecraft when you launch it, like... assigning the stages that your rockets will fire in and break off in, and then triggering those like after you've lifted off, like all that
figuring
stuff.
Figuring out how many tiny weird spiral rockets you want to affix to each other to create a ruined spaceship that doesn't fly well.
Yep.
Yeah.
Walking your little spaceman around after you've
jettisoning him from
landed.
a capsule and watching him float away as your spacecraft falls to the Earth.
Yeah.
Oh man, you can do that?
Yeah.
Oh god.
Yeah.
I only played an hour of the program of the computer software application.
Only put an hour into my space program.
With you guys a couple days ago.
Yeah.
I like that both of you guys both just had different interpretations of the word program just now, both based on Jake misspeaking.
Yeah. Well, it is a computer program.
I know.
My brain, it's not a game, apparently. I call it a computer program, not a video game.
It's all just software.
Yeah, it's just...
I mean, what difference does it make? It's all code.
My immediate mission, of course, very predictably, was just to create the stupidest possible spaceship, or at least to create the most aggressive mismatch of majestic mid-century American space program and doofy cartoon Pikmin spaceship. And it was really good.
Yeah.
Except that it never actually launched once in a way that was successful.
It launched, it just didn't make it into orbit.
Yeah, the actual act of building I haven't really played a construction sim game in a really long time, I don't think. So the act of just creating this stuff and then watching it go is way more fun than it should be.
Well, it was so good though, because that hour was just like watching the early NASA videos of just like a rocket just barely making it off the launch pad,
or like watching this stuff from like SpaceX and like all those, like all that shit now, where people are like starting that ship from scratch, basically.
Yeah, I was really proud occasionally when it would go up to the point that the atmosphere would sort of start to maybe fade away, but then we're like, okay, we're tilting, deploy second phase, and like try to maybe hope that if the boosters go away, maybe it'll, okay.
But then you might be like off kilter enough by that point that even when you do deploy your next stage, you're shooting off like laterally or something, and then
just like aggressively orbiting the Earth.
Yeah.
And then the final top phase, which was the first thing that we actually built, which was like 45 rockets all about the size of a Pringles can arranged in like a spinning firework coming off of the side of it, so that
so it would always cause like radial
just a crazy
rotation.
whirly gig, because you stack rockets and fuel tanks and
like separator rings,
and then separator rings, so then you can also arrange the launch phase, so every time you press spacebar, like the first time you hit it, the first set of thrusters go off and it launches, and the second time you press it, it activates the second phase, which makes that separator ring blow away, which is majestic as all fuck. When the huge fuel tank and rocket drift away, and then your weird 3 other rockets underneath that come on that you forgot that you put on, and then those majestically fade away, and then 40 rockets all fire to life at the exact same time, and they start spinning around at such an aggressive RPM that you just barf, and then you go home.
Yeah.
But you, Nick,
you
made a real one.
I made a real one after watching that. And well, no, I did about a half an hour.
You looked at that and said, "That's a baby game."
Yeah, I did.
Sure, how to make a real rocket.
Oh god, I totally went home and did the homework and made a real rocket, and it was really fucking good.
And then you modeled that rocket in Kerbal Space Program.
Yes, yeah, I made a. Yep, that's what I did. No, it's really good though. Like, God, so I built this actually no, there were 3 solid rockets, and then 1 liquid dude in the middle.
Wait, a liquid dude? You mean just a liquid rocket?
Yeah, liquid fuel.
Liquid fuel tank?
Yeah. And they all separated at the right time, hit that main rocket, went up just to like 40,000 meters, I guess. And then I realized, like, oh fuck, I need to be able to steer this thing, and then it just kind of went down and I exploded. But then the time after that, I added the.
That's what I love about this game, by the way, is that you learn things in that successive way.
Yeah,
Like, oh, okay, now I got off the ground. Oh, okay, now I got into orbit. Like, oh, I see. Now I like add this thing, and I can do the next. Like achieve the next thing.
Yeah.
Like it really does, as you say, feel like you're recreating kind of early NASA success.
When you add the propulsion to the side of the craft, so you can actually do the like. Psh, 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 psh.
Right.
Oh my god.
Do you steer that with WASD? Like,
you steer it with, I think it's like Q something or other.
Oh,
It's a strange configuration, but yeah, you can do this like rudimentary steering thing, and. Yeah, I broke orbit, and it was fucking incredible. Like, this music just it just slowly seeps in. It's just like...
Was it the same? Like,
calm space music?
Okay, so it wasn't the SimCity public domain, like 7X jazz music that plays in the hangar?
No, it wasn't the same music, but it sounded SimCity-ish still.
But it was still majestic.
It was like SimCity at night, majestic SimCity. But oh my god, like actually hitting...
Track 17 on the SimCity soundtrack is Majestic SimCity.
Yeah, you escaped the atmosphere and you were stoked.
Yeah, I was really stoked. And then at that point, you
fuck off.
Yeah, I was really stoked, Jake. I was rad.
Houston, we're stoked. We're really stoked up here.
It's tubular launch.
Yeah,
shut up.
But no, when you break orbit, you hit M and you get
M for Majesty.
M for right? Yeah, the Dota sound plays. No, you get like just an overview of Earth and then an orbit
of Kerbal 1
or whatever Kerbal Prime, and you get the track of your rocket at that point, and then you can start initiating like maneuvers in advance, cool. and you can actually try and set up a rough orbit, which is really difficult and kind of wonky, but. I ended up just like launching my guy by accident out of the spacecraft and watching him just float away to the moon.
Dead.
Yeah, completely dead.
You didn't put a spacesuit on it?
No, he had a spacesuit on. He just floated away.
Oh.
He's
going to be dead.
Yeah, he's dead. But
it's amazing.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. When you get up to space, it's an amazing
Did you actually get into any of the mods?
Not yet, but there are hundreds of mods apparently.
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit on the Erased episode, which is sad, but I'm really curious about that.
Yeah.
When you, on your phone, when you found that someone had recreated the entirety of like the Gemini rocket stack, so you could just build...
it looks fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want that.
Yep.
Yeah. Or a space shuttle.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm into a space shuttle.
Yeah.
I wonder if...
Because you can build like traditional runway-based craft as well.
Yeah, you can.
So the question was then, can you take the space shuttle up?
Oh, man.
And then can you land it on the runway?
So you can have a space plane, and you can build a buggy, apparently, like a rover.
Yeah.
Like, you can launch all of this stuff. So, like, I think the way it works is you just attach all of this...
That's what I was wondering. Like, can you...
the craft.
So that's a stage. It's just...
Yeah. There's a stage of just expel rovers. So, like... God, like now I think the end game of this is to set up basically the Mars, the recent Mars probe launch where you fire something off from Kerbal 1. It ends up in whatever planet, and then you launch the probe that then fires retro boosters and hits that thing, and you end up back on a planet as a dude. Like there's got to be a YouTube video of that, but I don't want to watch it. I'm going to do that for real. It's going to be the best. It's going to take me like hundreds of hours.
So right now, this is an early access game, Kerbal Space Program. You can get it on Steam, and I think probably from their website as well. I think it's been on their website for a long time now and was recently added to Steam. And it's right now there's only the sandbox mode, so you just have to go in and like figure out how to do all this stuff yourself.
The menu has a dimmed out
the menu
mode.
has a grayed out career thing that I think is going to be really awesome if they do it well.
Yeah.
You could imagine a version of this that just kind of like with fairly wide berth steps you through the various general stages you have to achieve.
Yeah, right now it's very much like getting into Minecraft or something for the first time, where you just are like, you're not gonna get very far unless you just
unless you look up
a
just some
YouTube
very
video
basic
or a
thing.
wiki page.
Because there's no tooltips or anything in the so like
at least in the current version.
In the current version, yeah. So even knowing like how to activate like various modal states that you need to be in to launch your rocket, like you have to either look in the like keybind menu or like
rocket. We built one ship first with no instructions, then just set it down on the launch pad and looked at it for 5 minutes, and we're like, cool.
Although we did only look at the one very initial YouTube training thing, and from that point we're able to kind of
we got pretty far. Not as far as Nick though.
Yeah.
But Nick was building off.
I was
having watched.
I was standing on the shoulders of babies.
Oh man,
on the shoulders of babies.
That's hilarious. You son of a bitch.
Yeah. Anyway,
I knew you weren't. When you started saying standing on the shoulder, I knew you weren't going to say something complimentary. I didn't call babies in advance.
Nick is an asshole this episode.
What do you mean this episode?
Ouch. Sick burns here.
I don't know. You were the one describing your like epic.
That was so good.
Terror.
You have to
reign of terror.
I remember every moment of that week.
God,
that week is like a military campaign.
It's
like,
pretty fuzzy.
I'm going to write my autobiography, and it's going to all be about that week. And then there's like, he was born and he died, but then also he like Neptune's pride for a week, and his fucking life was destroyed. He wrecked,
but not as destroyed as everyone else's.
No. He conquered.
It was glorious.
He conquered space for a week.
That is Nick Breckon on the shoulders of babies.
Yep.
Yeah.
So.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Yeah.
Bye forever.
Video games.
Wii Votes is going away.
Oh man.
Or everybody votes the Wii channel.
Oh, it is?
Nintendo's shutting down all their.
It's going away.
channels.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that channel.
Oh yeah.
Did you really? Why? What did you?
You can't vote on which is better, dogs or cats.
I know. I want to know. What do people think?
What did you love?
Who's to say? No, I didn't actually love it. I did actually use it quite a bit when it came out.
Really?
Just out of like morbid curiosity.
Did anything?
Not curiosity with like the actual polls. Just like why does this exist? It also
I really did want to know what people's favorite holiday was.
Yeah.
I wanted to know if people thought I should launch my Neptune's pride ships at Gertab or Paluku or whatever the fuck those planets were called.
Yeah. Paluku.
Gertab was one of them.
Oh yeah, Gertab. Oh god.
Because I made that
the Battle of Gertab.
I made that image based on the moon.
Oh yeah.
Movie poster.
Oh Jesus.
Yeah.
Fuck. God, that week.
God, Gertab, you had like what hundreds and hundreds of ships on one planet. That was so weird.
I was new to Bethesda at that time, and people were just like, "Are you gonna work ever? Like, what are you doing? Like, you're just staring at a space game. Like, what?
This is community management.
Yeah, this is. Some of these people played Bethesda games.
Probably
Get the word out.
Some of these people know who Bethesda is. This is a video game. I work in a video game company.
Social networking. Hello.
Online game.
Hello.
Web browser game. Webinar.
Oh man, webinars.
Hmm.
We should probably have an Idle Thumbs webinar.
Do you prefer chat rooms or webinars? Awada asks.
Yeah.
That wasn't Everybody
those
Votes
over?
channel. That was just Awada's interview with someone else from Nintendo.
Oh yeah.
Do you prefer the Wii or the Wii U? I'm sorry to announce Everybody Votes is closing due to...
Due to the results of this Everybody Votes
due
poll?
to inability to sustain a voting audience.
We've fallen below the sample size. Games. What are we talking about?
I don't know.
Prison Architect?
All right.
Jake is sad.
Jake is the saddest. He just remembers the corpse of that podcast.
Yeah, I remember all that stuff we were talking about Prison Architect.
It could happen again.
I was hoping that by me looking up that a dream would happen where just the audio of the previous conversation came in with an echo, but instead it would be like... So... it's not really the dream that I want to relive.
Anyway.
Yep. Oh, what was that, Chris?
Oh, what was what?
Oh, I don't know. Some sort of ga. Oh, goo goo gaga. So hey, Prison Architect. This is the all early access betas episode where we only talk about games which you can buy and play that aren't yet out but are released.
It's true.
So let's talk about Prison Architect.
I'm gonna be a dude in that game.
Have you played it?
I donated to it. Yeah.
What do you mean you're going to be a dude in that game?
They're making me into a dude in that game.
Oh, Breckon is going to be a character?
I'm going to be a prisoner, yeah. Yeah.
Citizen Breckon?
Citizen Breckon.
So this is
execute me.
This is from Introversion, the guys who made DEF CON and Darwinia and Uplink. It's a builder game where you construct it seems obvious based on the name, but you construct a prison that has to house an increasing number of prisoners. You get new prisoners, I don't know, every day or every week or something, I can't remember, on a regular basis. And you have to construct their cells and hire staff and keep expanding to fit the growing population and keep them from just like killing each other or escaping or any number of other things that can go wrong. It's one of the most depressing games I've ever played. Wow. Have you played it, Nick?
Yeah.
I mean, do you disagree? I don't know. I find this game incredibly depressing.
If I think about it. I try not to think about video games, Chris.
Well, because people describe like cart life as depressing, and like I see where they're coming from, but I don't feel that way about it.
Cart life is more like melancholy for you than or something, or like
but it's also like the thing that it's about someone trying to like make a better life for themselves. Like it's like unfortunate things happen. Did you get to the
point where the guy from Cart Life gets incarcerated and becomes a character in Prison Architect?
Oh God! But I guess for me, like I think to some people a game is like sad or depressing if there are like things in it that are sad, which is totally reasonable. But like for me, the thing that makes it sad or depressing to me is when you as the player are asked to perpetuate something that is like systematically creates a depressing environment. And because games are systemic in nature, that's actually possible to do in a way that is much harder to do in a movie. Like movies are depressing for the more traditional reason, which is like it depicts depressing things or like, has a tragic end or whatever. But in this game, like you as the player are tasked with creating an environment that is like inherently dehumanizing. Is like, I don't know. There's something. It's so weird. It's the exact opposite of what most builder games ask you to do, which is like create a great society and like make it prosperous and make people happy and stuff. And you still are trying to do that in this game.
You're trying to make them happier.
Yeah, you're trying to make them happier.
But you're also trying to it's nearly impossible to do that and maintain any money as your stupid prison, which has to make money. Which is gross.
Like one of the things that's effective about the game and makes it so horrifying is like you really are. You start off with like barely enough money to create even the basic prison that actually has running water and electricity and a staff and a holding cell and a canteen and a kitchen and all the things that the game tells you are like the bare minimum. It's actually really hard to make all of that stuff on the $10,000 that the game gives you at the beginning. So you have to immediately start taking out like grants to to achieve it. But it's it's very different than like SimCity or something, like the polar opposite of SimCity or something where you can kind of do whatever and stuff will basically work to some degree.
At least the new SimCity.
Yeah, right. That's what I mean. But man, it is a weird game.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Mechanically, it's really interesting. I think it's a good game. Like from just a, but it is thematically disturbing for sure. Which I think is I think that's good. I don't know. I feel like this isn't a game I'm gonna play like SimCity for 40 hours for sure, but it is a game that I'm interested to play when it's finished and see what they do with it from a thematic standpoint. Because I know, like in the tutorial, there's a little sort of vignette.
Yeah, I was not crazy about that stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I don't know how I feel about it. But yeah, there's a little story vignette of a guy who gets sent to prison, and then you end up basically send him to the death chamber, right?
You have to build the electric chair.
Yeah, and then there's like a little moment where he talks to a priest, I think, or something, and then
you send him over.
Yeah, but all prisoners.
And then my copy of it crashed, and then when I started a new game, I had a blank one because it considered to be completely tutorial. So I don't know the fate of that guy.
Oh
well, he dies.
Oh,
yeah. That's what happens when you send all those electricity volts through him.
Yeah.
Except in my version where I built the pool table.
Oh yeah, what did you do with yours?
I told people about this on the previous episode.
No, you didn't tell
So you
anyone
didn't
about
tell
it.
anyone.
But
Yeah.
no, I know.
You thought you were.
I realized partway through the tutorial, and I don't know if it was by design or not, that the tutorial was giving you suggestions but not requirements. The entire full game system was running during the tutorial, which is not usually the case.
Well, I think
in
they are requirements to progress, but they're
right. You have to meet the objectives of the tutorial,
but on your way to doing that,
you're not
you can do
locked.
whatever you want. Right?
So it at that point revealed how to do custom floors and how to add objects, because I was supposed to put a cement floor and then drop an electric chair in, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll just put a nice lay in a nice polished hardwood floor and put the electric chair on that, and then put a pool table in there. So it's nice in there, right?
Right.
And then the next step in the tutorial was to create the cement path that connects the room, your little weird death room, to the yard, so that they can escort the prisoner there, which meant that the next time that break came up, I left that door open, so prisoners just went into the room with the electric chair and started playing pool.
God, that's so fucking morbid.
I know, which is fantastic.
Oh God.
Yeah,
You made your rec room
it painted a really weird picture
in
of
the
just like
death
we're just,
chamber.
we're just like we're hard up on space, but someone did donate this pool table, so if you guys don't mind it being in here, you can play pool now, which I'm sure you'll appreciate.
Yeah.
I put it there mostly because it really grossed me out and amused me in a terrible way that there would be the scene at the end of the tutorial which I didn't get to. It was the guy being put to death by me and whoever else was in the room watching it, but then also making all of the stupid little AI characters have to crowd around the existence of a pool table in that tiny room.
God,
but I didn't
so
get to see it because the game crashed, and then I felt better about myself.
Yeah.
And then I failed miserably to make a functioning prison.
This thing you did had been erased from.
I didn't have to see the results of my own dicking around with people's lives.
Right.
I mean, the thing that was really affecting for me, and I mean, this is the kind of thing that I guess probably decreases as you become more competent with the game, because you understand the sort of order of reparations you have to do right from the beginning. But I had to make a few prisons in a row before I had one that was actually a good use of money right from the start and functioned in any reasonably effective way. And I found, like, by doing this several times, I started to just get distrustful of my prison. Like, I started to feel like simultaneously distrustful of and fearful of these little prisoner AI guys, because they would just, they'll get in riots, or like they'll try to escape. And so I immediately,
or in an endless riot.
Yeah. And so I would immediately start, like, my brain would already go through this process of thinking about them, like just sort of just cattle to be controlled as opposed to human beings. I mean, it's a video game, so they're never going to be actual human beings, but I thought about them way differently than I did just like The Sims and SimCity or something. Like, I was immediately like, fuck, gotta like early have enough guards, gotta make sure these guys are like regimented. Like,
early on in the game, when you don't know exactly what prisoners are capable of, just as video game NPCs and also just as people, like, if I leave the door open, are these guys just going to run out and try to escape? Or are they going to just go crazy and kick the shit out of everything? Like, well, actually, I had an experience last night playing where through some complicated series of events, one of my due to like related to the fact that jail cell doors can only be opened by guards, but not construction workers. So guards have to open them for them, right? And
sometimes that leads to like weird situations where they can't path right. It's where the game's not broken, but just the guy literally can't get through the door because it's not unlocked. And anyway, one of my construction workers ended up leaving a box in the doorway of one of the sliding jail doors, and so the door wouldn't close. It would like start to close, and it would hit the box, and then it would open again, and all my prisoners just ran away.
Yeah,
like they all just escaped.
Amazing.
Yeah,
that's really good.
It was actually really amazing, but yeah, it ruined that prison. And then another
that one asshole.
And then another game I was playing, and my guy. So there are like things that are scheduled to happen at different parts of the day. One of which is eating, and so when you get to the time of day where it's time to eat, your guards will do their best to escort your prisoners from either their individual cells or from their shared holding cell or whatever combination of those into the canteen, where the cooks will then bring food from the kitchen in there, and they'll eat. And for some reason, I don't know if I didn't have enough food or something, my guys all in the canteen, my prisoners, just started kicking the shit out of each other. They got in this huge brawl, like smashing the trays of food and stuff. And I'm like, oh my God. And then they somehow like this big fighting blob like migrated back into the holding cell, and the guards locked the doors, and they just kept fighting.
Yeah.
They just kept fighting and kept fighting and kept fighting. And it was like, it got to be like 4 a.m. and they were still all just beating the shit out of each other. And I had 2 doctors who were just in there perpetually just healing everyone, like going back and like getting more like hypo needles coming back, like healing the guys.
Yeah.
Like I didn't know what I could not figure out what to do.
So you just close that file and start a new prison?
Well, eventually, like I got so depressed, I just Alt F4'd, and just the next time I started up, it just started me up with a clean prison. And I'm like, oh, it was a really
reality is erased. Right?
Yeah, it was a very like taxing experience. Like it was like one of those because it went on for days. Like they never got out of it, and like it I don't know. I mean, it was like one of those like underground. Like is it a coal mine fire where like a fire gets started and will just burn for decades and decades and decades, and it's like, well, you can't ever live here again. This is just gone. This is just.
That's why you should have taken John's advice and just cement slab them in. leave it there.
Just over the doors.
Yeah, just leave it there forever.
Oh God.
Yeah. I don't know. The game's not done, so there are a lot of really wonky things that happen.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a simulation that, like, it's weird. Like, I follow those guys on Twitter, and just it's constantly like, well, today all the prisoners forgot where to pee, and they're just peeing on the walls. Like, it's just a constant bug mess. So it's hard for me to like judge that game as a final thing.
Yeah.
But like,
I mean, it works well enough. I mean,
it does
to get what it's going for and to be suitably grossed out by it.
The actual just sort of scale of simulation that they've chosen to use is one that I like a lot. Like I don't play a ton of sim games or even building games of whatever type this is. So this might be incredibly super stupidly common, but having to cordon off an office and then it just listing you the requirements of a room to be classified as an office means you need to buy a desk, you need to buy a chair, and it means you need to buy a file cabinet. Or like if you build a toilet, you obviously need to have a water pump and you need to run water to it. And like that stuff happening, the sort of facilities level, the scale that operates at, I like a lot. Like I thought that at first I would just end up zoning stuff and then it would auto-populate that stuff, but then realizing that I had to buy all of the furniture and make every single choice. It was cool just because you get really strong aesthetic control, but also you're dealing with really, really specific functional requirements in a way that is really, really nice until it all bugs out and goes insane. It doesn't work correctly, but the intent behind a lot of that stuff is really nice.
I haven't had a lot of experiences where I saw things that seemed like they were straight up bugs. I mean, that Infinite Riot thing might have been, but it also might just be one of the things that happens in a highly simulated
I had a lot of doors that were like
where...
half attached to a wall or opened on the wrong axis suddenly, even though I rotated them correctly, or characters who would just get trapped in a room and would just decide that their task was a failure when they could have actually just opened the door themselves.
Yep.
Like I had people lock themselves into an office and then just decide I'm never coming out of the office, and I couldn't figure out why.
Right.
And then it just said that their job was attempted and failed like 500 million times because they wouldn't leave the room.
Yeah.
Lots of little things that were just individual people, or like one individual system on one individual object would for some reason get it one state flipped, and then that would sort of cascade out and cause weird stuff to happen. It's a really cool thing because of that. I mean, we talked with SimCity, I think, about simulating everything down to individual elements and then hoping that creates an actual greater meaning that feels right. And Prison Architect actually does feel better in that regard than SimCity to me. Where
and I think part of that's just because it's smaller scale.
Yes.
Yeah.
But even the tutorial prison is not tiny. Like the number of actual autonomous agents.
But it's all like...
Yeah.
I mean, SimCity is like... They fudge a lot more to achieve the large scale.
Yeah, that's true.
Prison Architect doesn't fudge anything, at least doesn't appear to.
That's true.
In that way.
It's cool to see very clearly everyone's intent and everyone's like multiple exposed properties that they all have depending on their class and their states, and see all that stuff working as harmoniously as it does. It's cool.
Speaking of like, so Jake, you were saying the other day that this game, that they list Dwarf Fortress as an inspiration, which that game is kind of the just canonical, like modern individual scale, like person scale social sim game. There was a really, really good piece in the New Yorker, in the New Yorker magazine, but on the blog, I think, recently about the SF MoMA exhibit that was running during GDC, where they put a bunch of video games in the museum. in the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. And the thesis of at least at the beginning of the article, the thesis was kind of, it doesn't make any sense to display a video game in a museum. Like, it's not a good place to play a video game. Like, he was just the author of the post. He or she was describing the people playing the games as kind of interacting with them kind of like hesitantly, and people weren't really able to like get into the game the way you would if you're playing at home.
SimCity was one of the games.
Well, SimCity and Dwarf Fortress were both there, but they were both deemed like just too overwhelming and complex to actually have playable, so they just had screenshots of them.
Right.
You know, and the author of the post was saying, I mean, why this is just, I mean, that just in itself is kind of evidence of how silly an endeavor this is. But then from that point, he or she went on to just kind of just use that as a launching point just to discuss SimCity and Dwarf Fortress as games, and how Dwarf Fortress builds on the kind of just foundational existence of SimCity to be a way, way more insane, crazy thing. And the reason I bring this all up is just because one of the anecdotes cited in this blog post just demonstrates the level of insane simulation that Dwarf Fortress gets up to, which is apparently it simulates like individual layers of skin in dwarves. And at one point, one of the dwarves, the dwarves, one of their skin layers, its melting point was set such that if the dwarves became damp and then went into a room where the temperature was above a certain amount, they would just melt. Or something. Like, I mean, it's just like, holy shit. For that to happen entirely systemically, based on that level of micro simulation on the like just individual person or individual dwarf level is just preposterous. Yeah. Especially happening in a game that's all represented by ASCII art. It's totally crazy.
Yeah.
God, Dwarf Fortress is such an amazing thing. It's so weird. Yeah. I don't know why I brought that. It doesn't really relate to anything specific.
Anyway, dwarf skin will melt if wet.
That is just such a crazy. It was an amazing thing to read.
Sorry.
That's
yeah.
I don't know. Sim games.
They're good. Games are weird.
They are. I really like simulations.
Yeah.
I feel like they're good.
I mean, they do. The thing that's cool about them. This is what I was saying to Jake yesterday. There's something that is really obviously you can do really amazing stuff with sort of direct avatar control games, like the kind we talk about more frequently than any other game where you run a person around. But there is a certain thing that a simulation game achieves that is just completely impossible to experience through any other kind of creative work. And one of the things that is fascinating to me with something like Kerbal Space Program. I mean, with Prison Architect, there's like the morbidity, the kind of like potential for baby walling stuff, like as Sean coined, where you can just do really horrific things. But there's another separate kind of just unique to simulation software. I mean, it doesn't have to be a game, but it's most frequent with games, where the only way that someone who's super into like the space program and to the idea of like rocket science and like in the practical world, how that stuff actually plays out in reality or something approaching reality, like that person has to watch either someone else's canned simulations, or they have to watch like a special on the Discovery Channel, or like a movie, maybe even a fictionalized movie about like one of the Apollo programs,
or something.
From
the Earth to the Moon.
Yeah, something like that.
Or they have to dedicate their life to reading a bunch of shit.
Right. But in a game like Kerbal Space Program, which is, you could theoretically have a version of this that is actually NASA or whatever, but it's same basic thing. Like this,
the co-branded Kerbal Space Program, NASA.
Whatever, that'd be rad. You can make that game the exact same game, like just 2 tries right back to back. One of them can just be the most legitimate, majestic as hell, just out of control, amazing NASA-inspired rocket launch that achieves all the things. And the other one can just be Jake's crazy, 50 spiral rockets bolted onto a thing. And the game system will treat them both with the same amount of reverence, which I think is just really cool. Yeah. Like Jake can launch his thing, and on stage 5, the whole thing just starts spinning out of control and like going in a crazy bonkers flight path. And it's like this game will be just as rigorous with the physics simulation of either of these, and that's amazing.
Simulations allow you to basically recreate what like early flight was like. The process of just like making garbage that doesn't work whatsoever, and then finally you have the one thing that actually does work.
It's stuff that's only ridiculous to the human observer, not to the actual rules that govern its existence. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting. I mean, the thing I just said is is it like the actual thing I said is obvious, but it's still something I think is really cool.
I mean, it communicates the feeling of that process more than it actually represents it, but that's why it's nice. I mean, it allows you.
But it can represent the result fairly faithfully if the simulation is accurate.
Well, sure.
I mean, something like Kerbal Space Program is more physically rigorous than like SimCity or Prison Architect, but those are different goals as games.
Right, but Kerbal Space Program, unlike a film or a book, which is all of the meaning is governed by a human being, it is going to tell you the guy making the wing flapping airplane is a ridiculous idiot, whereas the people who made Apollo 11 are just majestic like pinnacles of humanity, whereas Kerbal Space Program's like, whatever you want to do, I will allow you to launch it and witness for yourself what happens. Enjoy. Thank you.
You can in fact rapidly oscillate between those two in the same launch.
Yeah, exactly. God, aka the best.
Yeah.
God, every stage being just the most like classical NASA rocket until the last one, which is just an insane disaster. It was the funniest
I know,
thing.
it's so good that you can build a rocket that is a study in comic timing.
Right.
Just
I know, right.
A 3-phase fucking joke of seriousness, increased seriousness, and then just...
Your main capsule is just a punchline.
Yeah.
Right.
So good. That's why video games are good. Your main capsule is a punchline. Kerbal Space Program.
IGN.com.
Yeah, Steam is fully inundated with all this stuff right now in a way that's really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're in a really good era for this kind of game. This early access stuff I like a lot.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Do you like it, Nick?
I do.
You sure?
I guess.
What do you prefer? Experience, whatever the hell that thing's called.
Oh, everybody votes.
God. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, it's not called the Wii Experience.
The Wii Experience. Yeah.
No, it's cool. It's weird.
Yeah. No, I mean...
It's another thing that we talked about the other day, but...
I see where we're going.
You don't have to say that. What did we do?
Oh, no, just... I mean, it's something that you said, Chris, and I think it's right, and it's the early access stuff that's sort of like the model that I always end up in my brain calling the Minecraft model, because it's what I always think of as the first one to make $1 bazillion off of alpha access, but just it offering a potentially like a creatively healthier alternative to the free-to-play model for getting an audience engaged and monetarily as well as figuratively bought in on your project and letting you build and iterate on it with a live audience, but not simultaneously having a business model that requires that you milk them.
Right, or requires that you unduly integrate that business model into the game design.
Right.
You know, like there's the nice thing about Alphafunding is that you can continue to bring in revenue while you're still developing the game, which is of huge value to especially indies. But you can do it in kind of an aesthetically purer way where you don't, even if you think your free-to-play game is like not encumbered by your business model, maybe it's not. Like I'm sure there are free-to-play games that do not suffer from that, but you don't even need to worry about it if you aren't butting that off. But like you still get a lot of the benefits that free-to-play would get you.
And from the player standpoint, it's nice that you're getting something up front, and beyond that, it's kind of whatever. I mean, that's the thing. That's the difference between that and like a Kickstarter, where like I'm giving you $20 and I'm waiting for something. And but with this, it's like, well, I've given you my money, I've gotten something that I enjoy, and whatever happens.
You know, though, that odds are high that if you if you play the game for a little bit, check back in a few months, it's going to be...
It'll be improved.
It'll be improved measurably.
But usually when I buy one of those, I feel like even if it doesn't go anywhere, or
at least you got something tangible.
I'm basically buying something that I want to experience now, and beyond that, fine. You know.
I also just saying this to Jake, but like...
You like saying this to me?
I like saying things to Jake, so I'm just going to look at Nick while I address Jake and see how weird this becomes. Seeing Jake, how do you feel about Alphafunding? I couldn't help looking at Jake just now. God damn it. Anyway, I was just going to say, as a player, I just so much prefer being able to pay the upfront amount that has been decided on and just not have to worry about a bunch of like other potential indefinite costs that I might have to buy over the course of my game experience. I like just not having to worry about that at all. Just all right, I'm helping you make your thing. I'm paying this flat fee. Like, good, thanks.
Yeah,
it's just nice. And you know, I mean, obviously games that are you just develop all up front and it's all the way are the same thing. But Alphafunding feels. I'm glad it exists because it feels like a tangible alternative for developers who might have to otherwise explore those other funding models that I'm less crazy about.
Yeah. Yeah, it's also, I mean, a resource for the developers too. I mean, especially with something like Prison Architect, you go on the forums and it's like, here are 1,000 bugs we found them for you.
Yeah,
here you are.
No,
like,
true.
oh, you know.
Yeah, that seems to be going on. Like, Kerbal Space Program obviously has been around since 2011. It seems. Thanks to everyone in the world who's told us to play this goddamn game.
Yeah, basically ever since it was first available, our readers have been clamoring for us to play this, and we've somehow managed to ignore them completely for 2 years.
I don't know why.
That was really bad call on our
I know
part.
Don't Starve seems like it's a popular game.
Yeah, I
as
want to
well.
play that. Have any of you guys played that?
I
have.
I played it for a little bit in the IGF, but I didn't get deep into it.
It's good. It's good. I mean, it's. Yeah. I don't want to. We can talk about it when we've all played it.
Yeah, maybe we could check out. I'll play a little more of it.
Yeah.
But you see those games bubbling up on Steam pretty frequently right now, as well as like Towns is one of them, and then I feel like there's another one that's been around recently.
Well, Don't Starve was actually a Chrome exclusive, weirdly enough, and that was it's
what? The browser?
Yeah.
You get it through Steam?
Google funded that game, and then
when you get it through Steam, does it play in your browser?
Google must have funded the beta access for it because it's in beta on Steam right now. Like it's not out, is it?
It's out on Chrome. It's the beta's on Steam.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, you can buy. I think if you buy.
Wait, so this beta is literally just to like test
so.
PC compatibility stuff,
I could be wrong, but when I bought a Steam key, I also got a Chrome key, and it was on Chrome like last year. I know. I played it on.
Maybe it's still undergoing. Maybe it's still ongoing development because I
think it is actually. As I recall, I remember they're adding things to it on a fairly frequent basis. Like every week, they're like, "Oh, we've added this or that." So yeah, I mean they're still developing it, but it launched on Chrome.
That's interesting.
Google is doing a few exclusives these days, but
weird.
Know that.
Yeah,
I didn't know that either.
Yeah,
the only place I ever see it is on Steam.
That game. Jordan Weissman's company made a game that came out on Chrome that it was funded by Bungie. They made that game Crimson Pirate thing. I mean, I assume it's like a kind of spiritual Crimson Skies thing, but
weird.
Yeah, Bungie has a division called Bungie Aerospace that funds indie games. Weirdly, I don't know. No one ever talks about this, but they've only. I think. I mean, they might have other projects in the works right now, but they've publicly only funded one, which was that Jordan Weissman game, you know, the guy who did Faza, the guy who did like BattleTech and Crimson Skies and like Shadowrun and all that stuff. And he made a web-based game that they funded like last year or something. I don't know. I don't have anything to say about it, but it's kind of fun. I played it for a bit.
Sweet. Cool. Do you want to take a break and then read some mail?
Sure.
Okay. Goodbye, everyone. For good.
Goodbye forever.
See ya.
This is the final episode of Idle Thumbs.
Bye!
We're out!
Video games.
It's... Wait, no, that's your job.
What was that? Are you serious?
I just forgot how it goes.
Well, you did?
Yeah.
Oh, and I thought you were just doing an Idle Thumbs 52, like callback to Idle Thumbs.
No, because no one was saying anything, and I was like, is it me? It's...
So apparently by me just being quiet, I can fully disrupt the start of every episode.
The first thing was that I forgot what the date was, so that's why I stopped the first time. But then forgetting what the date was reminded me that I never say the date. So...
Oh, man. So, do you ever wish you could rewind time?
It's April 17th, 2013.
This is Idle Thumbs 102.
I'm Jake Rodkin.
I'm Chris Reno.
And I'm Sean Bannon.
Wow. That was a disaster. Whatever that was weird.
That was interesting.
That was new and different.
Yeah.
Should we just go with it?
Yeah.
All right. That was weird. All right.
What?
We're back.
I need access to the email.
We're back.
Oh.
Nick needs access to the email.
We're back.
Okay, so we're going to do reader mail, but before we do reader mail, I wanted to really quickly mention, with respect to our podcast that was or with respect to our discussion about BioShock Infinite on last week's podcast, it was pointed out to me, obviously accurately, that my having worked at Irrational for a while on Infinite put me in a different position than the other guys here when we were talking about that game. And I just wanted to acknowledge that and say that's true. And I hope that any of my former colleagues at Irrational who worked on that game take that discussion in the proper spirit, because I think I said this in the discussion, but I do think that the people at Irrational are some of the absolute most ridiculously talented and passionate people you could ever possibly work with. It was consistently amazing. And I do think that the individual contributions people made to that game are astonishing. Like, just throughout, that game is a ridiculous achievement in a lot of ways. And, I stand by my general feeling about the kind of a lot of the way that game comes together. But in terms of a piece of work made up of component parts by talented people, like, it's pretty impressive to the extreme. And I hope that everyone at Irrational understands that. I mean, I'm sure they know because they worked on it and they're there. But I hope I was not misunderstood in that way. I just wanted to throw that out there. Anyway, reader mail.
You threw it out there.
I did. Thomas Burton says, "Hey,
Dear
Thomas."
Nick.
Yeah, all of these are effectively addressed to Nick because Jake and I already read these on the Ruined cast yesterday. So this is all on you, Nick. I hope you have interesting things to say about all of these emails.
Fuck you.
We read that one last night. We thought it was hilarious.
Well,
but
it's less funny now.
The second time it's not as funny. Thomas Burton says, "Hey, Thumbs, your thoughts about giving someone a gift every day for a month reminded me of something my mom once told me. When my siblings and I were little, she would bring us..." Thought that was funny, Jake?
No.
When my siblings and I were little, she would bring us candy when she came home from work. She did this for a long time, but eventually started noticing that we were no longer excited to see her when she got home. We were excited to get the candy instead. So she stopped doing it, realizing that she was just trying to assuage her own guilt for not being home with us all day, and candy wasn't going to solve that issue. Your conversation just reminded me about that for some reason, and also connected to how you guys tend to talk about video games. Thought it was interesting. Thomas Burton. Yeah. I thought that was a really good point. I think video games do that, like both... I think they do it both within games, individual games themselves, but then also in some cases, like systemically across many games, like achievement systems and stuff can kind of create that just like habitual reward thing where you just start to expect certain amounts of like flashy pop-ups as just like sort of certain minimum experience. And
do you think the video games feel guilty for not spending enough time with you?
I feel guilty for spending as much time as I do with video games.
Yeah.
With me?
Oh yeah, with my buddy Jake.
Collecting those sweet Chivas?
I wish I spent less time with you. I feel guilty about how much time I spend with you.
Yeah. I don't know. None of those systems ever really affect me. I was immune to them from day one, so I feel strange talking about them ever. I can't relate to anybody who actually responds to them. I feel like they're just some kind of weird thing designed for aliens. Like, I don't know. Like, achievements?
For babies?
I've never once cared about any of that. Like, even in a strange...
So if you had a mom who came home every day and gave you candy, you would mostly be excited to see your mom.
I would love to see my mom. I would love that candy, too. But only because I was excited to see my mom. I would say, oh, thanks, Mom.
If your mom wasn't around, fuck that candy.
Yeah, I don't really give a shit about the candy. It's I like my mom.
That's heartwarming, Nick.
It's really weird.
Yeah.
I just can't relate to someone liking their mom. That just seems so strange. Huh. Never really thought about that before. Huh.
Mother's Day is coming up.
Yep.
Hope I get some sweet candy.
Yeah, hope I get some candy. Hope I get an achievement for seeing my mom on Mother's Day.
I downloaded this app that tracks if you call your mom for Mother's Day every year. I'm on a 4-year streak. Got to get that sweet Chivo for the 5th year.
The 5th year? Yeah.
I don't have that app. It does occur to me that probably is an app.
Yeah.
Like, after I said it, I'm like, that's almost certainly...
If it's not, maybe there's a little money there. Maybe there's gold in
Oh,
those
man.
hills.
Yeah, you're right.
Called Mom.
Yeah.
Actually, the app is probably... It
reminds you.
It's I think Steve's actually working on that.
Called Mom?
No, he's working on Gone Home from the Fulbright Company.
Went home.
It's an iOS social app for tracking off, and you go back home to see your family for events like Mother's Day, and you get achievements and little gifts, like wallpapers.
Tolerated Uncle Frank.
I'm still not sure how my soundtrack actually ties into that app. Steve contracted me to do a bunch of music for Gone Home, but it doesn't seem like that app is a very good home for a bunch of original music.
No, I think it has like it's got like a GPS type situation where you log the address of your home. You didn't know, but Steve's actually contracted like many diseases. I said contracted instead of contracted. Steve has contracted probably 10 to 12 additional composers, and the game it tries to look at your texts and emails and things if you give it access to see what sort of relationship you have with your family, and then it plays the appropriate music as you approach the home.
Right.
When you're trying to go home.
That makes sense. That makes a lot more sense now.
So your music plays when you're visiting, I guess, like a family with whom you have a sort of challenging, but generally kind of healthy seeming 90s relationship.
Oh, that makes the direction he gave me so much more appropriate.
I'm really excited about it.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see the people who end up with like the Hans Zimmer score.
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
It's Nick.
It's just a family of orcs.
Yes.
If you're an orc.
Yeah.
I guess Nick is...
Yeah.
If you're Eddie Murphy as the horse, as the orc, then you get the Hans Zimmer score in Gone Home, the iPhone application from the Fulbright Company. Call your mom.
God.
Alistair Craig writes, Dear Thumbs, following up on your talk of whether or not games need to be finished, a frustrating film or book can be redeemed by a good ending. Your book club episode on The Crying of Lot 49 highlighted this well. It's a story that could be outright infuriating to read, but proportionally rewarding in hindsight to have read. Sure, games are best judged on the moment-by-moment experience, the need to be fun, but it's not immune to the power of a satisfying ending. Have you ever played a bad game made better in hindsight by its final word? An experience you didn't find fun, but which left a lingering feeling of reward? A game you hated playing, but loved having played? Alistair Craig.
They were Nazi trains all along.
Have you played Train?
No.
Yeah.
I lived the experience of playing Train by people telling me the twist at the end of Train.
That's true.
Which I've just spoiled. Did not ever play Train, apparently, unless you don't mind a spoiler.
It's fine. It's not a video game.
No, it's true. Has a board game been spoiled by... Man, this is another one that we talked about the other day, and I think I couldn't... When I thought about this before, I couldn't come up with a game...
Well, I think we should point out, first of all, that the guy's actually kind of asking different things.
There's two questions. That's true.
Like a game
I couldn't come up with a game that I've played. Jake Rodkin.
One of the things he's asking is... One of the categories he raises is that of a game, or I guess by extension another thing that isn't a game, where the ending
the end justifies the means, basically.
But then there's also separately the thing where you just didn't enjoy yourself playing the thing, but then in retrospect you're like, well, that was interesting.
That's a more common experience for me.
I agree. Me too.
Yeah, for sure.
The one of the end justifying a negative experience, I'd be very hard pressed to come up with.
For me, because I certainly didn't feel that way about The Crying of Lot 49.
No, I know. Sean didn't either.
Yeah.
I think it was the latter for Sean, where he did not really like the experience of reading The Crying of Lot 49, but then when thinking back on it and discussing it with us on the bookcast, he's like, there's a lot of that, because it sort of changed the hue of his opinion, I think, even though it didn't change the actual experience.
Right.
I think the ending of something can heighten the experience. That's you and I were talking about Braid being a really good example of that. Like the last, 2 to 5 minutes of that game cause a crazy ripple to go back and you reevaluate the past experience. But like I said, I think if you hated Braid all the way through and were for some reason forcing yourself to play through an experience you didn't like, you wouldn't suddenly get to the end of it and go, oh, I do like it.
Yeah. No, I agree. I can't imagine having that experience very often at all. I mean, I can't think of an example off the top of my head.
I can't either.
But sorry, go ahead.
The end is paying off what you experienced. I mean, like a sasatisfying ending is usually the result of what you've already gone through. And so if you're not enjoying that, or if it's not working for you, then it's really hard to imagine. But yeah,
Sean had some really really concrete examples, but there were numerous films that I watched in film classes in college that I just could not really deal with or care for the fact that I was watching them in the moment.
Yeah.
But then they just bore themselves into me and became internalized as things that I think about and reference all the time. And that happens with music I listen to and books that I read pretty frequently.
So this is something that I've actually this ties into something I was thinking about a few months ago about social media and like comment systems on blogs and stuff like that. Is they kind of actively, if you let yourself engage with them in the wrong way, they will actively poison your ability to like.
Well, because you codify your opinion externally immediately.
Yeah, exactly. Like when you read an article and then instantly just post a comment on it that has like your knee-jerk reaction, or when the second the like lights go on in the movie theater, you're already like just,
it lets your brain sort of take the index card of what that is and then immediately write down sucks and file it away. So that when you reference it again, the first thing that you see is sucks.
Yeah,
and that's a bummer. Yeah.
No. And it definitely, whereas, before we all had computers in our pockets, like at the very least, you'd have to go through like, I mean, you still also do this a lot of the time, but like before you're able to share your opinion with the world, you have to at least walk out of the theater, probably with your friends or your family, and like have that initial banter, and then kind of you drive home or you take the train or whatever, and you marinate it in for a bit.
For what it's worth, I think all of that is...
Well, it all still happens also.
But the negative effect of comments and whatever, I think can be combated by you being consciously aware of the fact that it exists. By you saying,
absolutely.
By typing this thing onto Twitter saying, I just saw whatever, a movie, and it was dumb. If you know to yourself, I wrote that right now, but that's just because that was my first impression. Like you have to forcibly tell yourself that.
It's hard to remember that though in the moment. Like because I mean, at least for me, like it's easy to just react to the thing and just be accustomed to just reacting to everything publicly at all times. Like it's easy to fall into that because all these tools are deliberately designed to be very easy to use and to be instantaneous. So it is something to watch out for.
Just being aware of what you're doing when you're doing it doesn't mean you shouldn't tweet about your sandwich.
Classic example.
What?
Yeah. You ruined that sandwich.
Or Jurassic Park 3D.
Yeah. Yeah.
The sandwich.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't feel like I'm actually affected by that.
You're affected by nothing. Nothing phases Nick.
Yeah, Nick
I don't know. I have
to
to be honest. I don't feel like I'm pressured by any of those systems in my life. I don't feel like it ever actually does touch me in a weird way. Like I don't know, but do I rate something on Netflix? I click the thing and it just goes away, and then I don't think about it ever again, and that doesn't really affect. That's just to make it go away. Like I just don't. Whatever.
You
4
literally
stars,
click
fine.
a random amount of stars.
Usually.
All right. You might be affected by things more subtly than you think. Like I'm not saying you're like high on the scale of being affected by this stuff compared to all humanity, but like it's pretty tough to be completely aware of all the things that are psychologically affecting you at any level. Like I'm
waiting right now for you to be like, oh, I'm aware of them.
Well, all right, here's an example. Like I saw The Master in the theater, right? I went on Twitter shortly after and people were like, what'd you think? I think my response was like, it was something vague. I blew it off because I didn't want to codify my argument at that moment. Like I knew that I needed some time to go over that film in my head.
You just do the other thing. With you, it's not movies. With you, it's any experience you have. It's instantly the worst experience immediately.
Yeah.
So
like everything starts down here and it just slowly rises and bubbles to the top. Yeah.
This process just affects you in different ways.
Yeah. No, I think I actively don't. I feel like I'm aware of that, and there as a result, I'm basically swinging the other direction now. Of just saying,
that's good. That's a good
I don't want to tell you what I think about this because I don't want to make up my mind right now because I know that I'm not going. Like my immediate reaction is basically bullshit.
No, that's a good habit. That's a good habit.
Yeah. Anyway. Yep.
Yeah.
I don't think we answered that guy's question at all. That's fine.
It's an interesting thing when you think about the role of a critic, though.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, the other thing I was going to say is that it goes the other direction.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think in games, I mean, not just games, but whatever, like, I see that you see this a lot on, like, kind of nerd-oriented movie review sites and things where, like, people will get really hyped up about a thing. And, like, in the heat of the moment after seeing something that is, like, where a lot of just money is on the screen, you immediately have people all rush back to file their blog stories or, like, the reviews as fast as they can. Everyone's caught up in this, like, holy shit, it was amazing. And then, like, a week later, it's not nearly as amazing as it was. But, like, those are all the reactions that got codified, like, on the aggregators and everything. Like, that's it's the opposite effect, but it definitely is.
Well, that's why you just go back and change your score 2 weeks later, Chris.
Oh man, shots fired. But I mean, I think that's a very real thing that companies are actually aware of and find ways to capitalize on. Media companies, I mean.
Yeah. For sure.
I remember how cool I thought The Phantom Menace was for 10 minutes.
Me too.
Oh, yeah.
Me too.
Yep.
When I saw that in theaters, like my very immediate reaction was like, "Oh man!"
I remember how confused I was that the second Matrix movie was something that I had observed and didn't know what to make of it.
Oh God.
Yeah.
And then that wore off pretty quick though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one I don't actually. That one I was.
That we're off in the car.
That one, as soon as it was done, I was pretty. That was a funny one actually because I remember seeing it with a bunch of people. And I remember leaving the theater, and they were like, "That was amazing," and I was like, "That was really stupid."
Yeah.
And they're like, "What the fuck are you talking about? It was a masterpiece." Like I remember them specifically saying "masterpiece," and I was like, "Oh."
Your friends are questionable.
They weren't actually my friends. They were all.
Oh,
No,
shots also fired.
no, because I saw it
after that.
No, I'll tell you. I saw it with the one person who was my friend, and then all of her friends. And my friend and I were the ones who were like, that was a suspicious film. And all of her friends all thought it was incredible. So, true story.
Turns out they made The Matrix too.
But I do specifically remember the Star Wars Episode 1 thing where I was sitting there like after the end credits rolled or whatever.
I
I'm
just
like,
saw a new Star Wars movie.
yeah,
that was rad.
like that alone was
Yeah.
like so exciting that I was like disproportionately affected by my reaction of it. Like, I mean, it happens.
Anyway, that's when my opinion changed at the end of a game.
I mean, I just thought the ending of Star Wars Episode 1 was just so strong that it really. Star
Wars Episode 1, the game.
I don't even remember how that movie ended at all. Anyway, there was probably a spaceship that blew up or something. Sean Malloy says, "Dear Thumbs Crew."
Oh, hey.
What?
I was replying to him. I wasn't talking to you. I was talking to Sean Malloy.
Oh, fine.
Hey, Chris.
Hi, Jake.
Oh, hey.
I was just reading some reader mail.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Dear Thumbs Crew.
Oh, hey.
You're the worst. Dear Thumbs Crew.
Oh, hey.
Dear Thumbs Crew, listening to Patrick Klepek's recent interview with Steve Gaynor at GDC, I was struck by the peculiar way in which we've been trained to explore virtual spaces. Steve mentioned that most of the people playing the Gone Home demo.
The Gung Ho demo.
Explored the house in a very systemic fashion, looking at all the objects in each room before proceeding to the next. This is very natural behavior for video game players. Whether it's The Walking Dead, BioShock, or a dungeon in Skyrim, we tend to want to clear a room before moving on to the next thing we see. But it's also totally at odds with the way we explore spaces in real life, which tend to involve wandering around, gathering in surface details and impressions, rather than immediately rifling every drawer in every room we walk into. The systemic, detail-oriented approach to exploration is not only at odds with the situations ostensibly depicted in most of these games, it also tends to break immersion, because players have to look so closely that they see all the seams of the world, bad textures, identically tiled books, etc. Is there a way designers can encourage a more naturalistic form of player exploration? Cheers, Sean. And he's got this little end cap here. If you returned home to find your family missing, would you calmly go through each room of your house looking in drawers and under tables?
So, first, before we get to the question, recording this episode a second time is very much like Jeff Goldblum's chaos theory demonstration. Where, like, I'm hearing this, and I'm like, I heard this before.
time.
I know. Right? I've heard this before, and we've all talked about it once before.
But tiny imperfections in the skin.
Right. Like, I'm sitting here thinking, do I just say the exact same thing that I said before? Or, like, can I make the drop of water go off the backside of the hand? Do I have something else completely separate to say? And I don't.
That is like a bullshit demonstration that he gives, by the way.
I know. They're
like,
it's rolling.
They're like rolling around.
just
She
going all over
already
the place.
stopped. She already started to like retract her hand. That was such a piss poor demonstration of chaos theory, Jeff
He's
Goldblum.
flirting with her, Chris.
I know
There's
he is, but
subtext in that scene, Chris.
No, but I still.
He's being Jeff Goldblum.
I'm not saying that part isn't successful. That part totally works, where he's like holding her hand to show her. Like that's all fine, but like it's just a little too goofy. I feel like she
buys into it too much.
When I was in third grade, I thought that like she as an adult, just who has, like could at least have said like I
Told Spielberg how to make his film.
No, I just mean like. You don't have to know anything about chaos theory to know that experiment is bullshit.
You don't have to know anything about chaos theory to know that's chaos theory. He gave a far better example in a minute, though, when he was in the car by himself talking to himself.
That's true. Man, so we all saw Jurassic Park 3D last week in the theater, which was fun. And the thing that was most mind-blowing to me about it was that in the scene where Goldblum noises occur,
you are fascinated by this.
I'm totally fascinated by it. It blew me away when we were.
What did it do? Jesus, where are we going? Okay, you can't. Okay.
Wow.
Anyway,
Yeah.
No, when they're in the helicopter approaching Isla Nublar? How do you say Isla? Is that what it is?
I think it's Isla.
Isla?
Oh God,
Isla,
I don't know.
maybe.
Isla.
I had a high school biology. I had a high
Isla
school biology
Nublar.
teacher who renamed herself Isla because she said she fell off a cliff in an island and woke up in an Aboriginal man's hut.
That does not mean that she's pronouncing it right. That may mean that she is absolutely not pronouncing it right.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, so they're approaching Isla Nublar. God, how did someone write that? And they're in the helicopter, and Goldblum is like, so you dig up dinosaur bones, and Grant is like, whoa, we tried to, and for some reason Goldblum thinks that's the funniest shit. Like immediate, well, we tried to.
Right. I've seen that laugh clip on YouTube looped so many times at this point.
Yeah, but never with the context.
Right. So I've always forgotten. Yeah, that like
it takes nothing.
My
to set
brain's
him
always
off.
like, oh, maybe he laughs it when he has to buckle the two seatbelts together.
See,
or like maybe
that's Grant.
I think the subtext there is that he knows what the park is, Chris. He knows that they made dinosaurs already. And Grant doesn't. And
Really?
he's laughing at him.
Because
he goes, the son of a bitch, you did it. So he actually knows ahead of time. He's in on the joke.
He's still pretty surprised to see the dinosaurs,
You're
though.
not picking up on this subtle, like, Michael Crichton subtext. I don't think you're quite penetrating the
This is
depths.
different than the book.
Of,
Not the same as Crichton's book.
No, he did his script anyway.
So anyway, exploring the house in Gone Home and the way players
Yeah, it really
explore a
reminds me
scene.
of Goldblum noises.
You're thinking of a different game.
It reminds me of when in Jurassic Park they're looking at a computer and trying to find something systematically. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Oh, they do. It's a Unix
It's a
system.
Unix system. They know this. She knows this. I mean, I thought it was a really good point that he made.
It's
though.
a good point.
And I've actually thought about this before. No, I know.
The question is, what would you do?
Yeah, and it's a really,
that's
really
that's a
hard
difficult
design question. It's
Yeah.
really, really tough. It would have been nice, actually, I guess, to have Steve on. We already realized this yesterday, and I still read the question. Wow. I was going to say it would have been nice to ask this when Steve was on. So maybe we can re-ask him if he's on another podcast someday, which I'm sure he will be eventually.
I do think that part of it does come down to the game not simulating the actual situation that would cause you to search a house naturally. Like I said that when we were talking about this before, but I still think that's part of the case. You know in Gone Home, the same way that you know in a cleared room in any game that no one is paying attention to you. You also know that there's no chance that any sort of passive social emergent event is going to happen the same way it wouldn't in real life. So you're just like, I guess there's just an
Yeah.
If there was the possibility that you would glean information by just passively searching a room mechanically, people would do it. But I think that there just isn't one.
Well,
I mean,
also,
so what would you do to change that? I don't know.
It's tough because as soon as you give people the ability to do anything, people will do it.
Sure.
Doesn't mean 100% of players will do 100% of it, but a lot of your players are going to engage with whatever systems you put in front of them. So that puts you in a weird case of like, well, you can allow them to open the doors, or you can make all drawers non-interactive so that people don't get accustomed to doing that.
Right.
But then you've made an artificial feeling environment.
There's no social or mechanical or any sort of punishment or detriment to just literally like, well, I'm in this room, I might as well, while I'm here, do this because it's actually more convenient mechanically to open every drawer now than it is to walk the entire distance of the house, then walk back, and then start looking here.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, best case, someone might do the cursory glance into all the rooms, then realize they're at the end and find a locked door.
Oh,
and then from there,
get through this somehow. Yeah.
And then go there backwards through the house, opening
Yeah.
every single thing until they find the key.
Yeah. It's a really tough problem, but it's a fascinating one.
I mean, I think what, I don't know. I mean, I feel like at that point, if you wanted to ensure that people wouldn't just linger and do all of the things, you've got to put some kind of pressure on them to keep moving, right? I mean, it can't be like a situation where you're just in this room. There has to be some kind of impetus for leaving that room and doing something else.
Yep. I mean, well, like Chris, one thing that you were talking about that I thought was good or was interesting was the baggage and context that you have going into a situation like that is really important. Like if this is a house, in the example of Gone Home, if it's a house that you either yourself have been in before or that you've played in a previous game, you would know, oh, if something weird's going on, like I should check the family bulletin board, or I should listen to the answering machine, or I would know I should run upstairs and look in Dad's room.
And you wouldn't immediately be like, maybe there's something in the refrigerator.
Right. And like in Gone Home, It sounds like the premise of that game is that it is a new house that you as the player and as the player character aren't familiar with.
Yeah.
But you would still have knowledge of how your parents operate, about the sorts of places they would keep stuff. You would at least think to yourself, I wonder if Dad still has that end table or whatever that you could run up to. And that without that, you are just kind of blank slating it. So it seems like just going through and consuming it like a vacuum cleaner.
Which is why so many games rely on you being a character with amnesia or like washing up in a place you've never been, because then it's appropriate that you would just
your
be like,
interests really easily.
I guess I'll just look everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah,
God.
it's tough. I mean,
Skyrim is
even
there's
even the like things that are the opposite problem. I mean, not problem necessarily, but like, Nick, you were saying, oh, you could put a time limit on it, and therefore, but then you have kind of another thing where how do you encourage people to act like a human normally does and walk if they can also run? Like there's all kinds of where people will just always do the thing they determine to be the most expedient in a game, even if you'd never operate that way as a human being under normal circumstances in the exact same environment.
Right.
Like it's, there's the games just struggle with that inherently. And I don't know what the answer to that is. I mean, it's like, to a certain degree, it doesn't matter. Like, I mean, to some degree, it's just if the totality of the experience is convincing to you and isn't so egregiously out of phase with what is ostensibly going on, then it's fine.
Yeah.
But these are still things that, like are interesting design challenges that
like
probably can be improved in some way. It's just not clear to us right now.
I can remember playtesting Skyrim early on, and I was in a room with like Todd Howard and like 10 other designers. And it was like the very beginning of the game. They were playtesting like the first thing. They just put it in. And I remember playing, and I was like, oh, Skyrim. Like I hadn't really played it at all. So I was like, oh, this is cool. And just looking around, and then finally I was like, oh, I'm being attacked by this dragon. Okay, and I just started running. And for the rest of the playtest, I was just like speed running, just like killing dudes, and I would just like run down the corridor. If you played Skyrim, it's this insane like this dragon comes down and starts attacking you, and then you have to make this escape through a tunnel.
Yeah.
And I remember like halfway through, I was like frantically killing guys and just running through doors and doing all this stuff. And Todd just like turned around and he was like, "What do you do? Like, why are you picking up all the shit? Like, stop! Like, why aren't you looking through all the barrels? Why aren't you doing all the? What are you doing? Why are you playing so weird?" And I was like,
"It's shocking.
There's a dragon coming down. Like, I'm running away from all this crazy war."
It's
and like,
surprising that he asked you, because usually one of the things in playtest is you don't do that. Like, you just observe what the player's doing, and like you don't try and.
There was an intervention halfway through that playtest. Why aren't you playing it the right way? Because we put all this stuff here. Look at it.
Yeah, I mean that kind of defeats the purpose of a playtest, because you're not going to be there in reality. So like,
I had already sort of gotten past the part that they were interested in, but still, it was this kind of moment of like, oh God, do I just play the game in a way that is wrong? But apparently, I think people just I think that people hit all over the spectrum of that when they're playing through a game like that, but. I don't know how you would force people to do one or the other. That it doesn't make it also just feel like a kind of, I don't know, pointless constraint.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, part of it is just not having as. I mean, there games like the Elder Scrolls games and like BioShock games or any games that are sort of highly systemic games where you run around the character in the world. In a lot of cases, probably could stand to just have less stuff to pick up. Like in some cases. And I mean, a lot of that can just be tuned with like how much stuff you get per pickup and like how valuable are those things and this and that. I'm not saying that should be true in all the cases of all those games, but I'm saying, it's a thing that could be attempted. I think a lot of times stuff like that ends up in a game like Skyrim because it's like expected from the genre, and like it's tough to make huge sweeping changes like that without people getting upset. But there are, I mean, it's interesting to play. I remember when Skyrim came out, a lot of people were comparing it to Dark Souls, or like maybe Dark Souls came out later. I can't remember. I think Dark Souls came out later.
Yeah, Demon Souls. I mean,
was Demon Souls people comparing it to?
Probably, yeah.
But in any case, those games are not like that similar in a lot of ways, but they are both sort of high fantasy games where they're very player driven, and there's a lot of stuff to figure out in them, and there's a lot of fighting. I mean, they're super different in all the specifics, but I remember people comparing them in a lot of ways, and it was interesting to me because you could imagine an Elder Scrolls game that really does just decide like we're going to rethink a lot of these just fundamental conventions and not necessarily just assume all of them have to be there in the same.
Yeah.
Like what could we learn from a game like Dark Souls? Not everything, obviously, but like what.
Well, I think the counter argument would be that they're supporting the player who wants to look through that barrel, and I'm not a guy who's going to look through that barrel, and I just don't. And so where's the problem there? I mean, they're just allowing for all of this to exist.
Well, because it's in the game. Like, there's a lot of other things you might like. The guy
Are you
who
talking
looks
about
in
from
the
a
barrel.
resource standpoint, then?
No, I'm not. I'm just saying like the person who wants to look through the barrel, like they want to look through the barrel because the barrel's there, not because they're a person who inherently loves looking in barrels. Like that's not. I mean, like there could be any number
That's
of
not
other.
entirely true. There are some people for whom just the actual act of digging into all the details in a space like that is interesting in and of itself.
Right, but what those details are is very specific. Like there could be some other mechanic that allows you to dig in. I'm not trying to like actually redesign the game right now. I'm saying in completely theoretical terms, like and I'm not saying this would be better. I'm just saying it's totally arbitrary the ways that exploring and looking in things happens to manifest itself in look in every barrel. That's all I'm saying. Like that is just one specific implementation of like thoroughly exploring a world.
Yeah,
it just happens to be
have weird like look at comments or something.
Yeah, I mean, that just happens to be one thing that got codified in early RPGs and now is just in every RPG. But I mean, there's nothing about that is like canonically to explore a place in detail means you have to look in every drawer in a home. Like, I mean, that isn't how you would operate it. You could explore a place in real life extraordinarily thoroughly without looking in a bunch of strangers' drawers. Like, that's just not.
No, that's a good point.
And I'm not saying I have a better idea right now. I'm just saying that all of those things are things that could theoretically be considered. And maybe the end result is, well, it turns out this is the best thing we thought of. And like, it is actually what we think is holistically the best choice for a game. And maybe that has happened at Bethesda.
I think it's worth saying in the case of, you're going to finish your butt.
I was just going to say, but I think subtractive game design can be really interesting for figuring out what are the things in this kind of game that actually really ultimately are the most resonant and like the biggest reasons people really love this thing. Like, how can we express that more cleanly or something?
Right.
Anyway, go ahead.
I was just going to say that in Gone Home, and it's weird to be talking so much about Gone Home because obviously no one has played that game with the exception of us and people at the IGF and stuff. But that game seems very much to me like it is directly inspired by exploring abandoned buildings and sort of social archaeology and stuff. And the way that you behave in Gone Home is totally like weird urban archaeologist. You're not role playing someone who's come home and is looking for your family. You're actually like, that is what's happening on the sort of narrative level of that game. But mechanically, the game is entirely inspired by, isn't it cool to look in an abandoned subway station or to find an old Victorian house that no one's been in and literally just pour over every document and be a sort of constructive archaeologist / whatever weird other
that's definitely true.
I mean, in that way, I wouldn't like it kind of implies in the guy's question, although I know it's not meant, it implies it as a negative or as a failure, just in that that's not what you would really do in real life. But I also think the game is deliberately aiming for not that experience mechanically, and it's achieving not that experience mechanically.
And I also don't I don't mean any of the things that I said as like specific criticisms of Elder Scrolls or BioShock or Gone Home or anything. Like I'm just like I'm just saying that they're like in completely general terms.
I know.
In completely general terms, like it is interesting when people like play with that stuff and see
I just was thinking back around to sort of taking the question at face value of that's not what I would do in real life, but then thinking about what is that game actually deliberately trying to do, and it's trying to do what it actually does feel like. Which is not exactly 100% in line with what the narrative is, I guess. But yeah, I would have no idea how to make those things one and one, but I definitely would know how to make a game where you want to poke through a weird abandoned building or something. Well,
and Gone Home is inspired heavily by games like BioShock. Steve worked on BioShock 2 and BioShock Infinite, and like that is a part of the BioShock games is like just that sort of like urban archaeology stuff.
Well, they're just subtracting everything else.
In Gone Home, exactly.
Except for that ghost.
Oh yeah, that ghost.
Classic Ghost.
Ghost.
A ghost.
Tegan Robichaux says,
Oh, hey, Tegan.
I had a crazy dream where I was going to go see Jurassic Park 3D with you guys at this huge theater that was laid out like an underground mall or something. You were cool, but Jake was no help at all. He kept saying things like, oh yeah, I've been here lots of times. I know where to go. And then getting us lost and not even caring. We waited in line for like 4 hours and we never got to see the movie. Thanks, Dream Jake.
Oh, man. So, Nick and Sean and I went to lunch with two other people from work today.
Oh man, is there a story about this?
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah.
Okay.
Oh my god, you're right.
The five of us were all walking. It was at a restaurant that was inside of a mall near work.
Yeah.
And the five of us were all walking up, and we realized that we parked in a place that was not really near a direct entrance to the restaurant that we wanted to go to, which was on the back side of it. So Nick and Sean went to the left, and then I went to the right with our friends Harrison and Jolie, and I was like, I got this. And we went into...
But as we split, it was like, well, we're going to get there. Like Sean and I acknowledged that we were not going to make it there before you guys.
Yeah.
Like, we were taking the long way around. We felt like discussing Dota.
We thought...
we were outside. It was nice and sunny.
I thought that I was going to lead Harrison and Jolie into the Macy's, but
Yes.
I accidentally went one door left into the employee tunnel access. Which turns out would have been quicker. And I was like, oh man, we got this. This is amazing. Like, this is perfect. I did it. We totally outsmarted them. We don't have to walk through the grandma underpants section or anything. This is gold. And then when we got out of the tunnel, without batting
but then Samuel Jackson's arm, as you reached the dead end in the employee access tunnel.
Yeah, I heard Harrison say, oh, it's you.
I think we're back in business.
But no, I just, without paying attention,
Oh, Mr. Arnold.
said, oh, Mr. Arnold, it's you. And
You didn't say it's you.
no, I know. I always think it's just
I know.
it's you.
Oh, thank God it's you.
Thank
It's
God
what we
it's
used to
you.
quote it
It's
as.
way better.
It is way better. It bums me out. The real line is what it
it's
is.
just,
It's
oh,
not
Mr.
as
Arnold.
funny. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I just literally, without thinking, turned right in a very authoritative way instead of left, and then just walked right back out of the mall the other direction. And Harrison and Jolie followed me, and then we're like, what the heck were you doing? I was like, I don't know. I thought I knew where we were going. And then I was like, oh man, and just loaded up that email because I had read it yesterday and read that to them, and then they were amused and sad. So it turns out that is
Yeah.
your email.
And 4 hours later, you got to lunch.
It grossed me out to think that someone listening to Idle Thumbs for any degree of time
Has somehow internalized
their
properties.
Right, exactly. Like,
Oh, man.
the data dump of me into their brain
Oh, wow.
actually was enough to like.
Yeah,
they
the
just
blanks.
need. Yeah, they have me enough that they
They
can just
could
fill the
write-
rest with frog DNA,
Yeah.
and they've got a perfect clone of me in their brain.
Wow,
that
Jake-
now-
Jake finds a way.
Oh,
Oh,
Dino DNA.
yeah, Jake finds a way very slowly to the Speed Pig barbecue
Yeah.
restaurant.
Is that where you went?
Yeah, there's one in Marin.
Oh, okay.
They got
I've
that
only been
Speed
to the one
Pig
near
goggles
you.
all over the place.
Goggles were in.
Yeah, maybe we're done now.
I think we're probably done.
I think. So anyway, we're gonna take a break.
Video games.
This is a monkey sound. Oh man, classic monkey.